So how's everybody doing? Welcome. So I'm Mayra Padilla. I'm the Dean of Institutional Effectiveness and Equity here at CCC, and so I want to warmly welcome you to our beautiful campus, Contra Costa College. I also want, yes, thank you. I also want to welcome you to ACCIÓN, West County Voter Education Project. It's our first annual Voter Education Summit. So this is actually an amazing feat that came together in a very short time. So thank you everybody for being here. We have a great lineup of speakers, including state and local officials that'll be here today. And everyone will be introduced shortly. We have 6 workshops that we will be offering. Everything from understanding the voting process and the myths of voting to how to get involved in the community and in your in the school and in your local city activities. We hope that the event is going to inspire you. It's going to give you wonderful information to be informed voters and informed citizens in our community. I want to thank all of the folks that helped put the event together. It's a long list of folks, starting with Doreen and Oscar Garcia, our co-chairs for ACCIÓN, Doreen Moreno, our inspiring students from our COPA group, Community Organizing and Political Action here from Contra Costa. Where are you guys? Stand up. Dr. Vanna Gonzalez, our chair for political science. Where are you, Vanna? Okay, she's downstairs. We have Anthony Caro from Citizens Power Network. We have Aaron Mendez from the elections, who's an elections outreach coordinator for Contra Costa County Elections Office. Aaron, please. Ludmila Lopez. And Armando Viramontes, where are you guys? Armando. Miriam Wong of the Latina Center and the West County Parents Council. So, amazing. Thank you. Sonia Bustamante, Chief of Staff for Supervisor Joya, and Supervisor Joya will be joining us for the afternoon. And we're going to introduce all of our elected officials shortly. I also wanted to thank our sponsors for the event. Richmond Police Officers Association, represented by Officer Benjamin Thoreau. I butchered it. And the United Latino Vote, Robert Apodaca. Robert, por favor. We also want to recognize Las Montañas for catering lunch and Don Gosney for videotaping our event. Thank you so very much. And then finally, I'd like to thank my staff from Metas, in particular Atsiri Lopez and Walter Orellana. So a big round of applause for all of the Metas folks. And so, everybody ready to start now? Yay! All right. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our Contra Costa County College District Board President, Mr. John Marquez.
Gracias, Mirna. Gracias, Mayra. I did that on purpose. Buenos días, buenos días.
Buenos días. Buenos días.
Sí se puede, ¿verdad? Sí se puede. Welcome to Contra Costa College, my college. I take possession of it because here is where I started my political experience, and here is where I started my educational experience. Both combined got me where I'm standing now as president of the Contra Costa Community College District Board of Trustees. Si se puede, se puede. So my job is not to stand up here and talk about myself. I have a job to do. It's my pleasure to introduce to you or present to you, those of you that know the person, State Senator Nancy Skinner. She took time from her job to come over here and join us. You know, that's why you're all very important. You have people from the state, you have people here that work with the state, and they will be talking to you about their experiences. So without further ado, I'd like to present to you our state senator represents this area, Nancy Skinner.
John, thank you, and thank you for your many years of public service and your incredible dedication to our community college students. And Myra, Oscar, Doreen, everyone else who put this on, thank you, and thank all of you for being here. This is a great turnout. It's wonderful. I'm here because this is my job. It is my job to be here for those of you who put me in the role that I'm in. I would not, who's my boss? If I'm an elected state senator of this area, who is my boss? You are. You're my boss. So of course I'm going to be responsive to you. I should and I better, but also because it is absolutely my core value. I got involved in politics when I was a student. And I got elected in my very first elected role as a student at UC Berkeley when I got elected to the Berkeley City Council. And I was the only student who has ever been elected to the Berkeley City Council. And that was a long time ago. But what I would say to you, and why I am so proud that all of you are here and that this event was organized, is because our vote, our vote is very, very powerful. And if it were not so powerful, why would some of the right wing and some corporate and other interests be so adamantly involved in trying to take away the voting rights of low-income people, poor people, black people, brown people? Why would they be so dedicated to that? Why? I mean, why would they take your vote away if it didn't matter? Because they're afraid of us. But we haven't made them afraid enough because we've not used our vote in the way, I don't want to say we haven't used it. We have, but we have not expressed our vote in the numbers that we really represent. So that's why I'm really proud to introduce to you a very good friend of mine, former Assembly Speaker John Perez, who also is one of the founders of an effort now, Civica, which he'll tell you about. What's Civica trying to do? It's one of many incredible efforts that is trying to reach out into our communities that have not yet used their voting power in the numbers that they have. So when you think about California and the number of Latino people that live in our state, you could totally turn every election around. And Governor Brown, to his credit, understood that it was the Latino vote that made the difference in his getting elected. Yeah, there's a lot of Democrats in California, but when he was up against Meg Whitman, that CEO from HP, and that woman who wouldn't pay her domestic worker adequately, right? I mean, that was she wouldn't even pay the taxes for her, and anyway, Governor Brown, even though this is this big Democratic state, he won because of the Latino vote. That's how powerful that vote is in California, and it could be even more powerful. But that's what John Perez, my friend, is here to tell you about. John is the first openly LGBTQ speaker that was ever elected to our state assembly, and I'm very proud that I had a significant role in that. And he is brilliant, he is effective, I'm proud to call him my friend, and he's worth hearing from. And I know all of you, because you're here, are committed to making sure that all of us exercise our vote and that we turn our communities, and our country around so it reflects the values that we have. John Perez.
Thank you, Senator Skinner. You know, you often hear politicians refer to each other as their friend. With Nancy and me, it's real. She and I have an amazing friendship, and quite frankly, I would have never been Speaker of the Assembly had it not been for Nancy's effort to, one, convince me that it was possible, and then two, go out and organize a lot of the key votes that I needed to be Speaker to make that a reality. Now, why do I tell you that? Because oftentimes when we look at politics and we look at the things the way they've been, it's hard to see what's actually possible. And the difference that you make by getting involved is making things possible that were never possible before. When Senator Skinner talks about the power that we have, it really is unlimited and undefined until you go out and make it possible and define the future that you want to see. It is great to be here with all of you, and I want to thank all of the organizers who put this together, and I want to thank ACCION West County Voter Project for this vision, because this is a crucial moment. Our institutions nationally are being challenged. Our norms, how we interact with each other, are being eroded. The structures of our democracy have come into question. And it's under these circumstances that it is more important than ever that we get involved and that we get others involved in our democracy. It was under these circumstances that a couple of friends and I got together and formed an organization called Civica Latino, which is intended to start in California and expand around the country. And what is Civica? Civica, roughly translated, means civically minded individual. If we look at civics and we get the definition, it's the study of theoretical, political, and practical aspects of citizenship. But what's citizenship? Especially for a lot of us in the Latino community, it's a charged word that gets used a lot of different ways. A word that might have different meanings to other people. You know, the modern interpretation is that it's one who has the rights and privileges of a free person. The ancient Greeks had a slightly different understanding. It was a person who had a special relationship with the state. The idea was that every person in a community had a share in power and a responsibility for the future. So you don't have to be a citizen in the way that people talk about citizenship to be an active and engaged citizen. You don't have to be an eligible voter to be an active and engaged citizen. So if you're not 18, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to be involved in creating the future that you want to see. If you're not yet a citizen of the United States, that shouldn't be a limitation on your ability to impact the community and the future that you want to see for yourself and for your family. So when I talk about citizenship, it's not just about that legal status of citizenship. It's about the philosophical status of being active and engaged in creating both the future you want to see and the accountability to make sure that other people are working for the things that you find valuable. We're here today in an effort to get back to that essence of that idea of shared responsibility and civic engagement. Well, California is perceived as a powerhouse in Latino representation. The truth is that we still trail behind other groups in key areas of civic engagement. We're less likely to speak at a city council meeting or a school board meeting, less likely to volunteer and get involved in local campaigns and participate in demonstrations, and less likely to vote, especially in non-presidential elections. It's this lower level of participation that sometimes limits the potential of our voices being heard. Now, last election in 2016, California, like the rest of the country, saw a spike in Latino turnout. And while this was an encouraging sign, it doesn't speak to the longer-term pattern. In 2014, for example, participation cratered. And while Latinos represented 39% of the population in California, we only made up 15% of the voters in that election. And that election had the lowest turnout of any election in 75 years. So if we had just turned out at normal numbers, instead of being underrepresented in our voice, we would have been overrepresented. Now, I take this personally because in 2014, I lost a statewide election in California by 481 votes. So when you think of a population of 36 million people, losing an election by 481 votes with the lowest turnout in 75 years, with Latino turnout at only 15%, just a 0.5% difference in Latino turnout would have had me win that election. And while that was important to me, I'm not sure it was important to very many other people. But what all the other messages we could have sent with higher voter turnout are incredibly important. And it is an important sign of who people look to in terms of being accountable to. Senator Skinner said she's here because you're all her boss. And that really does speak to her values. But for most elected officials, they prioritize who they go to and who they listen to by how likely they are to vote, in what numbers they come out to vote. And so the agenda, what they prioritize when they're in office, is often influenced by what matters to the people to vote in highest numbers. So even when you're campaigning, you go and talk to people who always vote. And only in rare elections do you go and talk to people who only vote occasionally. That's what Civic is about changing. And that's what ACCIÓN is looking at changing as well. About getting people who are occasional voters and getting them to vote more regularly. And what we're talking about today, demystifying elections, answering questions, is really at the core of what makes the difference. See, I was lucky as a kid. My parents always talked about the importance of civic engagement. And my father wasn't a citizen until I was already an adult. But his lack of citizenship, in the legal sense, didn't limit his ability to talk to his kids about the important role that we could play. Didn't limit his ability in talking to elected officials about what the priorities for our communities should be. So we should never limit who we listen to, but it's important to go out and change these numbers. My mother, on the other hand, was a citizen and never missed an election in her life. And she had an interesting pattern. She would get all the material that was mailed to her and save it up, and then sit there and go through item by item, race by race, and figure out what she thought she wanted to do on each question on the ballot. And then she would call all of us together, my sisters and my brother and I, and she would walk through and talk to us about everything that was on the ballot. And she'd ask us what we thought, and tell us when she thought we were right, and often tell us when she thought we were wrong. And then she would do the same with our neighbors, and go through the ballot with them. And on election day, she dragged one of the 5 of us to go vote with her. It was her habit. When she got older, she could no longer go to the polls. And she had to start voting by mail. And it was the most devastating thing for her to have to vote in a different way. She was used to going to the polls and voting. And it just didn't feel right. We had to tell her, Mom, you're doing all the same stuff. The only difference is you're sending it in a couple of days before the election instead of going to the polls. But she had to change that habit in the way that she expressed her vote. Why do I say this? I say this because what we know is voting is a habitual practice. For too many people, they think if they register to vote and vote in November presidential elections, they're done. They've done their civic duty. And in non-presidential elections, in primary elections, in local elections, they think, I took care of my civic duty when I voted in the presidential election. And that becomes their habit. So what we're looking to do at Civica, what I think ACCIÓN is really at its core looking to do, is change the habit of how we interact with the political system. One, in demystifying voting, making it accessible. And two, in saying it's something we should do at every opportunity. Because when we do that, people start prioritizing what our values are and what our priorities are. Again, when you're running a campaign, and I run a lot of them, you talk to the people who always vote. So what happens to the folks that only vote occasionally? Nobody's talked to them. So they're less likely to vote, and it becomes a vicious cycle over and over again. So the work that you're going to do in registering people to vote that aren't yet registered, and in talking to people who only vote occasionally, and getting them to understand why they've got to vote all the time, it is what makes the greatest difference in the future of our state, in the future of our society, and about creating the priorities that you think are important. I'm involved with a group of people that on a weekly basis get asked questions by the Sacramento Bee about the future of politics and what's important. And this week the question was, what is the most important issue on the 2018 ballot? And my answer is, the most important issue on the 2018 ballot is whatever it is that gets somebody out to vote, right? It doesn't matter what it is that motivates me to go out and vote. It's what's going to motivate you to go out and vote. What matters to you? What matters to you? What is it that is your highest priority? And too often when we do campaigning, we just try to tell people what they should go out and vote for. And the more important task is to ask people what matters to them and get them engaged and explain to them how their vote makes it more likely that somebody's going to listen to that issue that they prioritize. So, for the young folks in the room, how many of you are under 18? That is beautiful stuff. Remember what I said a few minutes ago. You don't have to be 18. You don't have to be an eligible voter to make your voice heard. Senator Skinner started as a student activist. I started as a student activist actually in junior high, walking precincts. I registered hundreds of people to vote before I was ever old enough to get out and vote. And I got involved in issues in my community that mattered to me. When I was a teenager, the state of California tried to build a prison in my neighborhood. And there had been already a couple of jails in the community, and we knew that the last thing that we needed was another prison in our community. That wasn't the future that we wanted to see for ourselves. So we got involved. We went door to door. We gathered petitions. We showed up at meetings. I read my first environmental impact report as a 15-year-old and went and testified about the negative impacts of this prison on our community. And we engaged in a community fight that ultimately defeated the effort to build a prison in that neighborhood. 20 years later, I was on a commission that had control of a variety of pieces of land throughout the city of Los Angeles, including this parcel of land that the state had tried to build a prison in. And we took that same parcel that was going to be this horrible prison and converted it into a green tech job incubator. That was the vision we had for what our community needed. And yes, it took 20 years to get there, but the first victory, defeating the prison, was something that we were able to do relatively quickly. So the fact that you're not yet old enough to vote doesn't have to limit your ability to be engaged in the community. Doesn't have to limit your ability to get other folks who are old enough to vote, who are eligible to vote, to get out there and express their values, but more importantly, to get out there and express your values too. And for the parents in the room, some of us are citizens and voter eligible, so we've got to get out there and vote. And some of us aren't. And even if you're not voter eligible, again, the same is true for you as it is for our young folks. That your lack of ability to vote in any given election shouldn't be an impediment to creating the mechanisms that make people more accountable, that make them invest in the future that we want to see for our community and for our young people. And for those of us who are voter eligible, because we're citizens and because we're above 18, then we've got to do the things that we're asking everybody else to do, and then some. We have to model the activity of creating these habits of always voting, of showing up at city council meetings and school board meetings, of asking the questions and challenging and creating the accountability to make our society a better society. When you look at the Constitution of the United States, the first charge in the Constitution is to form a more perfect union. It is a realization that as great as we are at any given moment, we can always do better. And we do better by coming together or having our voices heard and creating the expectations that we achieve together as active, engaged citizens in the traditional sense of the word. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your commitment to this work, and thank you for having me this morning.
Muchísimas gracias. Mire, si hay personas aquí que necesiten traducción, pasen para acá y les prestamos estos aparatos. Tenemos una traductora aquí que traduce todo lo que se diga del inglés al español. Pero si agarran uno de estos, tienen que poner su firma aquí, ¿ok? Anybody here need one? ¿No? ¿Ya todos entienden? Ok. Aquí pasen para acá y aquí se firmen y se los damos. Gracias. Gracias, doctora. Thank you, Dr. Padilla.
President. Para los padres que están aquí hoy, me da mucho gusto tenerlos aquí porque siempre, como dijo John, tememos hay veces ir a votar y su voz es bien importante, y si usted personalmente no puede votar, quiero que hoy decida que a todas las personas que usted conoce y que puedan votar, va personalmente a asegurarse que vayan a ir a votar en esta elección. Es bien importante. But for all of you that were under 18, part of, most of you are here for Metas. Most of you know that the program is not just about making sure that we get a good education because we want a good job. The philosophy that we have in Metas is that we want to go to college to change our community, to make sure that we create the kind of life we want to live. And so being involved civically, being involved whether it's through sports, whether it's through church, through your educational system, through politics, in any way that you feel important, get involved. And you heard, you have an amazing, amazing mentor here in John. At 15, he was already helping his community make really key decisions. And so I hope that today you will leave inspired and get involved. We're going to be doing precinct walks throughout the next month and week until November 6th to get out the vote. So we hope that you will join us.
Myra, before everyone goes to the workshops, I was thinking that, and maybe everyone here already knows this, but what deadline is coming up on Monday?
Registration. Last day to register.
What deadline Monday? Yes. So between now and Monday, anyone that you know who's not yet registered, who can get registered, should go online and do it or fill out the form. What other deadline is this Monday? If you want to vote by mail, so in other words, if you think you might not have time to go to the polling place and you want the flexibility, because, you know, that's another way that our voting gets suppressed, because our voting without that ballot in our hands before, we're stuck to only be able to vote between the early morning and 8 p.m. on one single day. Many other countries let you vote for a week or a month. Here, it's that little section of time. We're going to change that someday. But now, the ability for you to have the flexibility is by getting that vote by mail ballot. So registering for vote by mail. That's also deadline Monday. Yeah, and when's the voting? Yes, but if you have that ballot in your hand, when can you vote?
Now.
From now till Election Day, right? You have the total flexibility to vote any point between now and November 6th. If you only go to the polls, you only have November 6th.